Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I am going to be telling you about 20 books that I would like to read in 2020. So this is a pretty popular video format and in no means original, but it isn't actually a video that I've done before. I don't tend to do a yearly TBR. You guys know I am a TBR setter. I have my monthly Bookopoly, so that kind of guides what I read every month, and I previously never felt a need to make a yearly TBR. However, I don't know what it is about how I'm feeling right now. I'm not a mood reader at all. I'm quite happy to follow the structure that Bookopoly gives me because it's rare that I'm really excited and desperate to read anything from a particular genre or any particular book unless it is one of my most anticipated releases. But at the moment I just felt like there were quite a few books that I really want to get to. None of these are 2020 releases. All of these are backlist books. Some of them have been sitting on my shelves for a very long time. Some are more recent additions to my collection. But the one thing that all of these have in common is that I keep saying that I need to make time for them and I never do. I am going to revisit this probably next January and we will see how many of these I've managed to read. So the first book I plan on reading in 2020 is the only reread here. I didn't really want to add rereads, but I looked at this book and I actually desperately want to read it almost immediately. If you look at my stats from last year, I do reread quite frequently. However, I usually do that in preparation for a release coming. For the first time in I do not know how long, I don't think I have a single series that I need to reread ready for the release of the next book, which is interesting because I'm currently at a point where all of my favorite authors are starting new series, and that is not a place I have been in for years and it feels really strange to me. But one series that I am definitely going to be rereading in 2020 and I'm so excited about is the Occult of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J Maas. This will be my fourth time reading the first book, my third time reading the second, and my second time reading the third. This is the story of Feyre Archeron, who is a human girl whose family are quite poor, and one day when she is hunting in the woods in winter, she accidentally kills a Fey shapeshifter who she believes is a ordinary wolf. Because of this, the High Lord of the Spring Court takes her from her home and makes her live in the fairy world in exchange for the life that she took. This is a fantasy romance series. Sarah J Maas is my favorite author. This is my favorite series. I'm so desperate to revisit this world right now. These books also bring me a lot of comfort because I feel so happy when I'm reading them, and I'm excited to revisit that in 2020. Next up we have Obsidian by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, which is actually on my January TBR. As you can see, I'm including books in this list that I am reading quite soon to give myself a little bit of a break. But Obsidian is the third book in the Illuminate Files, which is a young adult sci-fi trilogy. Each book in this series does follow different characters, but there is an overarching plot. I'm not sure who the characters for Obsidian are, but in the first book we follow Katie and Ezra, who have just broken up when the planet is attacked by this big corporation. They escape on a fleet of spaceships, but they are on different ships, and chaos ensues when the main ship in the survivors fleet is heavily damaged, which means that it is unable to move through space very quickly, and one of the enemy ships that attacked them is actually pursuing them at a faster rate than they can currently move. Loved the first two books in this series. Illuminate was one of my favorite books of 2019. I have not been able to fit this in for the longest time, but I am actually doing really well with my Bookopoly TBR and I'm reading a ton so far this month, so this should be done very soon. Next up we have Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, or the entire Farseers trilogy. So I'm not gonna lie, I don't know a lot about this. There are a couple of books in the stack that I don't know too much about, but this is a classic fantasy series, not super classic, but one of those ones that's held in really high esteem. I think Robin Hobb has around 16 books out right now. Now you may have heard whispers along the grapevine about a little something called Elder Lingalong. Elder Lingalong is a thing. It's really hard to say, but it is a thing and it will be coming soon, so keep your eye out for that if you also would like to make a start on Robin Hobb's books this year. As for the plot of this, I really do not know anything. I just know that it's epic fantasy and the main character in this series and through a lot of the realm of the Elderlings is Fitz, and everybody loves him. We then have The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, and pretty much all of Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere series, but mainly in 2020 I do want to get through First Era Mistborn. I have read Elantris by Sanderson, and I have also read the novellas that go along with that, and the first book in his novella Paranormal normal series, Legion. Now, Mistborn, once again, don't know too much about the plot of this. I only know about the magic system. I believe that that surrounds metals. If you ingest a certain type of metal, you get a certain type of ability. And I think the Mistborn can ingest them all. I also think that there's a rebellion or an uprising or something happening in this. And once again, similar to Elder Linglong, there will be an announcement regarding Brandon Sanderson coming on my channel very soon. But if you can't wait for that and you want more information, Rachael has just posted an announcement for the Cosmere Along, and I'll leave a link to that in my description box. I had to put it in here, guys. Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This is the sequel to Six of Crows. It's the final book thus far in the Six of Crows series. I believe a third book will be coming maybe next year. And it is the 5th book in the Grishaverse. Now, Jade from JJ Reads and I were buddy reading the entire Grishaverse. However, we kind of hit a speed bump when we got to Crooked Kingdom, where we kept putting it on TBRs and did not read it, and then stopped putting it on TBRs altogether. I think Jade and I are going to be picking this back up in February and continuing on through the Grishaverse. This is a young adult series that follows a group of thieves and criminals led by Becca, who have picked up a job to pull off an impossible heist to break the inventor of a drug out of a maximum security prison. I enjoyed Six of Crows, not my favorite book ever. I didn't love it as much as a lot of people do, but I do really love some of the characters in there. So now that I'm attached to them, I think I'm going to enjoy Crooked Kingdom a little bit more when I actually get to it. And while I've just mentioned Crooked Kingdom, I may as well throw these out there as well. King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. This is the 6th book in the Grishaverse, the 1st book in Nikolai's duology, I think. This follows Nikolai, who is one of the main characters of the Grisha trilogy. He's introduced in book 2, Siege and Storm. He's my favorite character in the Grishaverse. I've heard that this book is kind of disappointing, but I love Nikolai, so I hope at least Nikolai is great. And hopefully, if me and Jade make it past Crooked Kingdom, we will be moving on to this. And of course, we do have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, which is actually still on my Goodreads currently reading, because I read 50 pages of this in October, I think, and then just lost track of time, didn't pick it up, and now I would have to start it again. I'm gonna, when I film this video actually, I'm gonna go remove that. But this is Leigh Bardugo's first adult book. It follows a girl called Alex Stern who goes to Yale, yes, and she is a member of the 9th secret society at Yale, which is called Leith, and the responsibility of that house is to make sure that the secret occult practices of the other 8 secret societies are all above board and not getting out of control. I just think that while I'm nearly at a point where I've read all of Leigh Bardugo's books, I may as well throw this in there and be up to date on everything she's published so far. I then have Truthwitch by Susan Dennard. This is the first book in a series that has 4 books in it, maybe. I'm pretty sure there's at least 1 book in this series that has yet to be released. I believe that this is a young adult series in the US. However, when I bought Truthwitch, it was marketed as adult in the UK, but I have since seen it in the young adult section, so I guess we'll call it young adult. I don't know too much about the plot of this, but I know that there are 2 witches and there are different types of witch. One of the main characters is a truth witch, and she is coveted because of that for some reason. This is one that I bought shortly after Truthwitch was published in the UK, which is a little bit after they're published in the US, and since then I've really wanted to read it, but I just haven't picked it up. One of the reasons is because I'm just in the middle of so many series. I want to wrap up a few before I start new ones, but this has been staring at me from my shelves for a long time and I need to read it. Vicious by V. Schwab. I have read the first 2 books in the Dark Shade of Magic series by V. Schwab, and since then I have read nothing by her. Although if I move just a little bit to the side, you can see that here I have nearly every book that she's published, and I'm just not reading them. So the reason that I've been not necessarily reluctant, I just haven't prioritized Schwab, is because when I read the first 2 books in the Shades of Magic series, I enjoyed them, but everybody else loved them. They just didn't hit that spot for me. I did enjoy them. I think I gave them both 4 stars. I just wasn't super blown away, and then when the 3rd book was released, I never got around to it. Every time I want to pick up a Schwab book, I always think about them not living up to the hype for me. I do need to go back and finish the Shades of Magic series, but I think with me being so reluctant to read Schwab at the minute, I need to go for one of her books that I really think that I will like, and the Villains duology is the one with the plot that speaks the most to me. So in this story we follow Victor and Eli, who think that they have found out how to create extraordinaries, which I believe are people with magical abilities. I believe that they've discovered that the way to do this is to keep having near-death experiences, and so they kill themselves themselves and each other and bring themselves back from the brink of death over and over again to further their knowledge and assumedly gain abilities. Now this is called the Villain's Duology. I know that every character in this is a villain, which is something that I particularly like, and I also love grey morality. So this is one of those series that encapsulates those things that I love perfectly, and I've wanted to read it for quite some time. There's just that little thing inside of me that keeps putting me off reading Schwab. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix by J.K. Rowling. I just realised that I lied to you when I said that ACOTAR was the only reread on this list. However, in my defence, the reason that I want to continue my reread of Harry Potter is because I have actually only read it once. I believe that I started reading Harry Potter the year that this book was released, I think. So this is an original copy, so I can get you a year on that. 2003. Wow, so I was 10 and I read each book once and I never went back and revisited it. At the beginning of last year, I did reread the first 4 books in the series, and I do have a book diary on each one. However, when we got to this chunky beast, I just stopped. I just stopped reading them. So one of my goals for 2020 is to complete my reread and read the final 3 books in this series. Obviously, I've not made that a solid goal to add one to my TBR every month. So if I don't finish the series, then that's fine, but I at least want to make progress. Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Ames. This was gifted to me by Cody from Cody's Book Corner because it is one of her favourite books. One thing that I really like in books is the kind of old men on tour vibe, which sounds really weird, but if you think of the bit in the Game of Thrones TV show when Jon Snow goes beyond the wall with a whole crew of older gentlemen, that vibe I absolutely love. This is a book that I had been meaning to ask Cody for a long time whether it has that vibe, and she said it kind of does and then sent me a copy. So this book follows a group of ex-mercenaries who have laid down their weapons and gone to live their lives. However, I believe that one of their daughters has gone missing or been kidnapped or something like that, and they get the band back together to go and find her. As you can see, this plot pretty heavily implies it has that vibe that I'm looking for, and so I've wanted to read it for the longest time because of that, and I'd like to make it a priority this year. Another one of Cody's favourites is Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. This was actually gifted to me by Bobby from Bobby Reads Too Much. Thank you, Bobby, for that. I can't lie, I want to read this book because it sounds like Nevernight by J. Kristoff, which is one of my favourite series. Mark Lawrence is known for writing grimdark fantasy. I don't think this is the darkest series that he writes. I think the Prince of Fools, is it the Broken Empire trilogy, is darker than this one, but he's known for some pretty dark shit. In this series, we follow Nona Grey, I think her name is, who is an assassin nun. That is all I really need to know. I'm not sure exactly what the plot is, but a lot of people have said that this is pretty similar to Nevernight. I do want to read more from Mark Lawrence. I do have Prince of Thorns, but I know that Prince of Thorns seems to be a little hit and miss with a lot of people, so I would like to start with Red Sister because based on the plot, I think I will enjoy this. So I'd rather read this than read Prince of Thorns and possibly be put off and be less excited for this series. The Girl King by Mimi Yu. I bought this when it was released last year and I didn't read it. I thought this cover was absolutely stunning. I really wanted to read more East Asian fantasy, and then I just never picked this up. Now in the UK, this is sold as adult, but on Mimi Yu's Twitter profile, she says that she is a young adult author. So even though I do normally go with where the books are placed in the UK, I'm going to go with the author's word on this one. So this is a series that follows 2 sisters. One of them is supposed to be becoming the Empress, and the other one has pretty much resigned herself to living in her sister's shadow. However, when the Emperor named their male cousin as heir to the Empire, shit hits the fan, I imagine. That's all I know about this, but just my anticipation for this is still there, and every time I look at it I think, man, I really wanted to read that book, and it's just kind of fallen by the wayside. There has been a cover reveal as well for the sequel to this book, so if I do read this and enjoy it, I also have that to look forward to. At the end of last year, I read I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, and that led me to realise that I really like books that are heavily science-based, or books that contain something that seems paranormal but that has a really logical scientific background or explanation to it. I asked you guys for recommendations in the vlog that I read that in, and a lot of people recommended The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. Now this is a book I've owned for a long time. I picked this up secondhand a couple of years ago, and I keep forgetting that I own it because it's a large paperback, so it's not on these shelves behind me. It's actually on the shelf that's on the other wall, which mainly contains books that I've already read. So this is a book that a lot of people loved back when it was released, and I saw it on BookTube a lot. My interest was piqued, so when I saw it secondhand, I snapped it up. I know very little about the plot of this. I think that there's some sort of zombie apocalypse, and and there is a girl who has a power, and I'm not sure if her power is that she's immune or her power is that if she touches people they get the zombie virus, but it is something like that. You guys said that this is heavily science-based and you think I'm gonna like it, so this has been bumped right back to the top of my TBR, and I'm going to try and remember that I have it. On a similar note, I also would like to read Feed by Myra Grant. This was gifted to me by Kristen, and actually King of Scars was as well, so thank you so much, Kristen, for both of those books. Myra Grant is also known as Shauna Maguire, who writes the Wayward Children series, but I believe that when she writes as Myra Grant, she writes a lot of sci-fi, and I think it is heavily science-based. So this is the first book in the Newsflash series. I believe it's set in 2014. Humanity has conquered a lot of illnesses like cancer and the common cold, but in the midst of all this medical advancement, a new infection has arisen that infects the human brain and compels them all to feed. Sounds really interesting to me. I haven't read too many zombie stories, and I especially don't think I've read any adult zombie stories aside from the Walking Dead comics, so I'm excited to see if this one will be a hit with me, because if it is, I know that Myra Grant has a lot of heavily scientific books out there for me to continue on with. One that I was supposed to read last year is Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor, or the entire trilogy. Trade the Dreamer was one of my favorite books of 2017? Yeah, 2017, I think. Since then, I have been desperate to get to Laini Taylor's other predominant series. This is another one of those that is classed as young adult in the US, but it's adult in the UK. And this follows a girl called Karu who lives in Prague, and I believe she's part demon or something like that. And I believe that she is an art student, but she's also like a delivery girl for some monster. I think this is also a portal fantasy. I know a little bit about one aspect of this from reading the Easter egg that's in Muse of Nightmares, but aside from that, I am pretty clueless. I do really love Laini Taylor's writing style. I think that she has a beautiful prosaical way of writing, and unlike some authors who write fantasy with a writing style like that, I think that she has a pretty decent fantasy plotline as well, although my predominant draw to her work is her characters and her writing. I have no idea how I have managed to put this off for so long, but hopefully 2020 is the year. In the vein of wrapping up a couple of series, I have Night of the Seven Kingdoms by George R.R. Martin. You could also say I would like to read Fire and Blood as well, but that is currently only available in hardback, and I would rather have my A Song of Ice and Fire books in paperback. I believe that the paperback is actually released on my birthday, so I will be getting that. Whether I read Fire and Blood in 2020 is a big ask because it's enormous, but Night of the Seven Kingdoms is a little bit shorter, and I also believe that it is a collection of short stories. This is the story of Dunk and Egg, who are characters in the history of Westeros, so before the Korra Song of Ice and Fire series is set. I think that Egg is one of the Aegon Targaryens, and he's related quite closely to Maester Aemon, I believe. I don't remember if it's his brother, I think it could be, but it is the story of Aegon and Sir Duncan Tallheart, and I think it's just like an adventure story set in the history of the world. I do know that a lot of people really love this book, and there is also a sequel, I think, coming, although with George R.R. Martin, whoever knows. But with me reading the A Song of Ice and Fire series up to date last year, I would like to continue and wrap up the little side stories as well, so that I am fully prepared for the Winds of Winter if he ever decides to release it. I then have Ensinger by J. Kristoff. This is the last book in his Lotus War series. I read the first book right at the end of 2018, and the second book was my first read of 2019. I didn't carry on for whatever reason. I guess I just couldn't fit it into Bookopoly for a couple of months, and as soon as I started rereading Nevernight, I decided I love J. Kristoff so much that I'm going to go and reread this series from the beginning. Just because I love it so much, I don't need to. I could go into this and remember most of what happened in the first two books, but I would like to reread the first two and then complete the trilogy. Which reminds me, because at the beginning of this video I said I had no rereads planned either, and here I am saying I'm rereading something else. So this is J. Kristoff's first adult series, and in this we follow Yukiko, who is the daughter of the Shogun's Master of the Hunt. Now the Shogun is as spoiled and entitled as you may expect, and he asks Yukiko's father, and therefore Yukiko, to go and find him a thunder tiger. The only problem is that this world is heavily polluted. People wear breathing apparatus so that they don't develop a disease that's similar to lung cancer, and all of the animals, all of the plant life are close to extinction if they are not already extinct. So to find a thunder tiger is a essentially an impossible mission when most normal animals are already close to extinction, and the thunder tiger is a mythical beast that may have never existed in the first place. I absolutely loved this series. I thought at one point that I loved it more than Nevernight, but then I reread Nevernight and thought that I loved that more. I think, to be fair, I'm just not very good at remembering feelings in a moment, so whatever I'm currently loving is my all-time favorite thing, and there'll be no way to figure out which one is actually my favorite, because I don't think there's actually going to be a point where I'm reading them both simultaneously. Regardless, I think that when I've completed this series, it will be one of my favorite ones of all time, so I would like to do that this year. We then have Battle Royale by Kushin Takami. This is the novel that the movie Battle Royale was based off, which is essentially the same as the Hunger Games, but 10 times more gory. This is a translated work, and I wanted to read it at the time I watched the movie. However, at that time, I had never read anything that had been translated, and I wasn't sure how that worked, so I didn't know if this would be really complicated and difficult to read. I do actually read a lot of things that are translated from Japanese now, and I'm definitely comfortable reading this. It's just a little bit chunky. So this book follows a class of teenagers who, for a reason I can't remember from the movie, I do think it's quite different from the movie as well, but for a reason I can't remember, they are taken to an island and they have to fight to the death. So as I said, it is pretty much like the Hunger Games. It does predate the Hunger Games by quite a bit. This first book was published in 1999. A lot of you guys have told me that this is an excellent book. With Battle Royale being such a good movie, I was worried that the book wouldn't live up to the movie adaptation, which I know is rare, but it does happen occasionally where the movie is better. But you guys have kind of reassured me that this is worth reading, and I hope I can get to it soon. And then the final book on this 2020 TBR is one that I want to get to very, very soon, and I think I'm on the verge of falling down a rabbit hole, and I'm worried if I fall down that rabbit hole, you guys are never going to get me back out of it. But the book that I would like to read is The Lord of the Fading Lands by C.L. Wilson. This is a book that I bought late last year because I was looking for fantasy romance. I really wanted to read some. I hadn't read a Sarah J Maas book in over a year. My issue at the moment is I think if I start reading this genre that I am going to want to only read this genre, and that it is going to be my favorite genre ever. But last year I did find a list of popular fantasy romance, and this is one of the highest rated. Some of you guys have read it and told me it is actually really good despite the hideous covers. I don't know too much about the plot of this. I think there's a guy in it called Tyron Soul, I believe is his name. I know that this has a soulmate plotline, which was pretty much the only criticism of it that I could find on Goodreads, and that was from people who didn't like that sort of romance, which instant soulmate stuff isn't my favorite, but I don't dislike it. I think also in this we have some sort of species of magical tiger, and the lives of the magical tigers are closely linked to the lives of a certain race of people, and the tigers are dying, which means that the race will die out. And yeah, that's all I know, but I'm really excited, and I think I may be reading this very soon if Bookopoly allows it, and if my TBR allows it, and I'm actually reading quite a bit. Lord of the Fading Lands is coming up, and I'm both very scared and very excited. So those are my 20 books I would like to read in 2020. Please let me know if you guys have read any of these and what you thought of them. Please recommend me some more fantasy romance. Just to clarify, I prefer high fantasy romance as opposed to urban fantasy romance. So if you have any other recommendations apart from C.L. Wilson, let me know. Also, if you'd like to know what romance tropes I like to better recommend me fantasy romance, I like hate to love, I like slow burn, hate to love and friends to lovers. I also like the Sarah J Maas archetype of brooding, angsty, alpha male warrior types. I really like that. I really like angst. Angst is a good thing. So if you know a fantasy romance that has any or all of those things, then please drop it in my comments because I need to know. But that's about it for this video, so please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you want to. If you head into my description box, you will find a link to my Instagram, Goodreads and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.